Hello, church. This is Pastor Brent. I hope everyone continues to do well and is staying safe. And just want to come again this week to kind of give another just midweek devotion from the book of Proverbs. And today, the proverb comes from Proverbs chapter 10, verse 9, when Solomon said, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his way crooked will be found out." What a very powerful, action-packed psalm. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verse 9, the first thing that Solomon says here in this text is the word whoever, which means that in this text, the promise is that whoever, there's no prejudice here, there's no racism here, there's no favoritism here. He specifically says that whoever, that means any person who decides to believe what he's about to say and then apply it, the promise of what he says is for everyone. This is one of the things that I love about the Bible, about Christianity, is that despite the fact that people may say it's very exclusive, it's everything but that. It's very inclusive, and we see the inclusiveness of God and of Christ in all the scriptures when He makes it clear that anyone who would come and follow Him, He by no means turns away. Isaiah would say, Isaiah 55:1. "Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and anyone who has no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price." Jesus would say in Matthew 11:28 through 29, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." There's this universal theme in the scriptures that whoever wants to come into Christ, whoever wants to make applicable the word of God, will find its promises to be true. So Solomon says, he starts off with saying, whoever. And he says, whoever walks in integrity. The word therefore walks means the ideal of it is not, and you notice that it doesn't say just walk as if it's one time. The word is walks. That word in the Greek means to proceed forth, to go in. In other words, Solomon's saying that the word for walks is it's a lifestyle. It's a pattern of life. It's a habitual routine that a person continues to choose to do. And so what is that routine of life? He says, whoever walks in integrity. Now, the word integrity is a very common word we use, but it's also a very important word that's found in the scripture, a good applicable term for the Christian life. But the word for integrity here in the Hebrew is a word that means upright. It means a word that's perfect, someone who is correct. It denotes somebody who strives to live a life that is pleasing to God, that's correct, and strives for perfection. They won't get to be perfect, but strives to live a perfect life in their actions, in their thoughts, in their emotions, in their attitudes, in their emotions. They strive to live right in accordance with God's commands. They strive to live in a correct manner as God prescribes it. And Solomon says here in this text that whoever walks in integrity, notice that he says they walk securely. And that word there for securely means walks in confidence. They walk with assuredness. They walk with a bit of boldness, and that's true, because those who walk in integrity, those who walk, who live out God's commands in a way that's pleasing to Him, they don't have the same type of fears and anxieties and depressions as those who walk without integrity. So for a person who walks in integrity, they don't have the same fears of, did I get HIV and AIDS from sleeping with all these different type of people? When you walk in integrity, you don't fear that because you're not doing that. You don't fear of, did I get something from shooting up in my arm with all the drugs? Did I get some sort of disease and hepatitis because of the needle that you don't worry about those things. You don't worry about how's my family going to eat because of my gambling addiction, or with my lack of being able to save money and squandering on things I don't need and putting myself in huge. When you walk in integrity, you don't worry about some of those things. You don't worry about, are you going to go to jail? Or you don't worry about, is someone going to come and pay me back for the way that I messed someone over? Those kind of, when we walk in integrity, some of the same fears and anxieties that the people who don't walk in security have, we don't have, because the fact that we are walking in a manner that pleases Christ, that some of those fears dissipate because we don't bring them into our life. You know, a lot of times, the word for integrity means, it denotes someone who's authentic and someone who's sincere in what they do. And it's interesting he uses the word walks in integrity, someone who walks with sincerity and walks in authenticity. Because, every day we do one important thing in our life. Every day, all of us have to walk. If we want to go anywhere, we walk. But it's interesting that on that when we walk on what most of us would refer to as the sole of our feet. That means the bottom of our feet. That we walk with the soles of our feet. And because the soles of our feet are in action every single day, they need to be protected. And so oftentimes the way that we protect them is we put shoes on them. But when most people go to buy shoes, in particular like leather type shoes, one of the most important things they look at when they buy leather shoes is they want to find out, is that leather genuine I'm about to put on my shoes? Because genuine leather is important in protecting the sole of your feet, because the genuineness of the leather means that the shoe will probably have some longevity to it. Leather being made out of animal hides is thicker than non-leather and will be weatherproof. It will last for a longer period of time, and it won't, unlike fake leather, it won't just dissipate and fade very, very quickly. So genuine leather is important to protect the soles of your feet. If you want your feet to last long, your shoes to last long, to protect you every single day. Well, I would say in the same exact manner, in the soul inside of our spirit, inside of our body, the soul and spirit, it also needs to be protected. And it also needs to be protected with a genuineness. And I think that the genuineness that we wear upon our soul to protect us from the many different things that can bother us. We wear shoes to protect us from getting stabbed and our feet getting hurt. Well, there's many things that want to stab at our soul and wound our soul. That genuineness is the shoe we need to put upon it. And the brand name of the shoe we put upon our soul, in a sense, is integrity. When we put integrity into our heart and soul, it helps us to walk in a manner that we can walk in confidence and we can walk securely, because of the fact that our soul is protected by the integrity of our life. It's amazing whenever you watch iron workers, on these high-rise buildings, whether it be in New York or in Chicago. It's incredible to watch them, because here they are at these extremely high heights. There's dangers all around them. There is a consistency of falling at any moment and at any time. And yet you see these guys are when they walk across these beams, they walk with confidence and they walk securely. Why? Because they have a harness that keeps them tied to the iron. It keeps them tied in place, so that if they were to fall, they would stay secure. And because as long as they know that they're tied off onto something, there's something that they're attached to, it gives them the ability to walk these high heights in these dangerous situations without the fear of falling. And I think in our life too, the rope that we are to be attached to, the rope that attaches us to Christ, is integrity. Integrity is kind of the safety rope that attaches us to the power of God, that even though the world is dangerous around us and we could fall at any moment, we can walk securely in our life every day with that attachment rope of integrity connected to Christ, which then gives us the power to overcome things in life, to keep us strong and help us to walk secure. And so I would just encourage us to continue to stay connected with Christ in the Word of God, in prayer, fasting, seeking His face and fellowship that keeps us strong in Him and keeps us secure in our walk. But then he says the opposite. Solomon says, but to the crooked, his ways will be found out. The word there for crooked is the word that means to bend. It means to perverse. It means to twist, in a sense. And I think it's interesting that it says here that he who makes his way crooked, because it's not that God makes a person's life crooked. Man's the one who chooses to do the things to create his life to have a crookedness and a bend in it. They always say that when a tree is first, you plant a tree, or a tree is first put in the ground, a tree is designed to naturally grow up. But sometimes trees become bent, they become twisted, they become curved. And typically that happens for, among many different reasons. Two of the main reasons is, one, the tree is not getting enough light. And secondly, there is an issue with the soil and the roots beneath it. If it doesn't have enough light, the tree just kind of withers and dies and just kind of bends. If there's not enough soil, if there isn't enough root, if there isn't enough, there's problems in the beneath the tree and the roots and in the soil, then the tree will also die. And I would say that for someone who is crooked, which means that they take the commands of God, they twist them, they pervert them to use them for their own purposes or for their own glory, to use them to satisfy themselves instead of satisfy God, or they bend God's rules to do what they want. I would say typically it comes from two reasons. One, they're not living in the light. The light of God is not penetrating their life, and so because of that, their soul and their heart is dying and is decaying, and it's causing this bend to happen and shift in their heart. And maybe you find yourself there today. You were once pretty strong in Christ, but you find yourself being seduced by the world and the flesh and the lies of the enemy. You were once in the light, but it's been covered with darkness, and you find that you're starting to bend and curve to what more of what this world looks like. Instead of growing straight and walking in a manner worthy of Christ, you're bending towards Christ. Or maybe it's because you've let your heart go unchecked for a long time. You haven't protected your heart, and you're finding that there's some roots growing beneath your soul that's coming to squelch and choke you out. And you're finding yourself beginning to get twisted up in this society and crooked and bent up in this world. And so it's easy to do that. And yet it's easy to think that, because he says that his ways will be found out. It's easy to think and insinuate that perhaps you can live like this and not get caught. But the Bible makes it clear that you will indeed be found out. See, sometimes some of us handle the game of life like people play the game of Twister. In the game of Twister, when you begin to play, the whole goal of the game is to see how bent you can get and still stand up and still be able to remain the same and yet win the game. Sometimes it almost seems like for some people that they want to try to bend God's rules and twist it as much as possible and yet still come out on top in the end. And it just doesn't work like that. And some of us can play hide and seek with God. The oldest game in the Bible is hide and seek in the Garden of Eden. We find Adam and Eve created the game of hide and seek whenever they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 3:7 said that their eyes were open, they felt shame, they gathered fig leaves and began to hide themselves from God. And that was because of the shame and guilt. And their hearts became crooked. And because of that, it sent them into hiding. And one of the ways you can tell your heart is crooked is that you love to play hide and seek, not with your parents or your friends, but we play hide and seek with God. We've been doing it ever since the time of Adam and Eve, and it's because of the crookedness that may be in our heart that we are ashamed of or we're fearful of. But as God came walking in the garden to find Adam and Eve, he comes walking to us today and says, where are you? Where are you? And so that would be the question I would ask us today as well, is where are we with Christ? Are we walking in integrity, or are we walking with this sense of crookedness about us? And I just would pray that and inspire us today, as Solomon says, that when we walk in integrity, we have a security about our life that's not full of fear and anxiety as others who don't walk in integrity would. But if we are walking in crooked ways, you may be able to get away with it now, but the reality is you can't escape. The worst person to ever play hide and seek with is God, who sees all things and knows all things and will bring all things into exposure. And you may be able to get away with things now, but we won't be able to on the day of judgment. It's amazing, isn't it, with the technology and science now, that people who committed crimes back in the 70s and 80s are now being found out for what they did. DNA has developed so much that people who committed crimes several years ago who thought they could get away with it are now being found out and tried. Well, it's the same for us. If our hearts are crooked in any way, and if there's areas of our life that are not walking in integrity, we may be able to fool people right now, but we won't be able to fool God forever. And just because he doesn't do something about it right now doesn't mean that he doesn't see it. But just may we all today check our hearts to see, are we walking integrity, and is our hearts bending and crooked? And one of the best ways I can tell you to do that is, when you go to the store and you give $100 bill to the cashier just doesn't accept it. They usually take that $100 bill and they shine it up to the light so that the light shows whose image is actually on it. And if they see that Benjamin Franklin image in that $100 bill, they know it's authentic. Maybe today we need to ask ourselves, are we people of integrity, or what's our heart look like? Is it crooked or bent in some way? And I think one of the best ways to do that is to hold yourself up to the light. Put yourself up to God and look at yourself through the lens of the scriptures. Ask God to show you who you are and what you look like to him. Ask other people what they see. Make yourself accountable. Hold yourself up to the light of God and see what image comes out. And then maybe perhaps you can see the authenticity of who we are in areas perhaps we need to change in. May you guys be encouraged this day. Blessings to you guys, and hope you continue to stay safe. Love you all.